Like Markus. I'm going to talk to you guys today about business formation and a lot of the risks involved in having just a sole proprietorship. So, not actually incorporating your business entity and registering with the Secretary of State. The first step in forming a business is going to be deciding what type of business entity you're going to create. There's sort of the suit that a business wears. The four main types that I'm going to talk about today are sole proprietorships. That's basically no difference between you just going out and selling something. It's just you are the business. And you've also got partnerships, which is sort of the same thing with just more than one person. Limited liability companies are probably the easiest to create and most flexible companies out there for a small business that's just starting up. And corporations are a little more complex, and I'm not really going to cover too much of that today because most of you guys probably aren't going out and finding shareholders. So, sole proprietorships, like I said, are essentially people going out and starting their own business without any type of corporation or anything. Consider it the lemonade stand of business entities. You can go out and just start selling lemonade on your own. That's sole proprietorship. So you're not registered with the Secretary of State. You have no protection between your business assets and your personal assets. So what I mean by that is if, let's say, using an example from Arrested Development, if I own Blake's frozen banana stand, then if I go out to my creditor and I say, I want to buy $15,000 worth of bananas, and I can't pay him. So he files a lawsuit against my business for $15,000. If I'm not an LLC or a limited partnership or something like that, he's actually suing Blake Markus. So the headline on the lawsuit reads, creditor versus Blake Markus. It's not Blake's frozen banana stand. So you can see that if you're just doing a sole proprietorship, you risk a lot of your personal assets. A creditor could go after your home, your vehicles, any sort of property that you have, real estate. So you put a lot of stuff in danger if you decide not to take the formalities of actually creating a real business entity. On the flip side, there's also no protection of your business assets from lawsuits against you personally. And what I mean by that is if you're sued, say for a drunk driving accident, if you're reckless and careless and happen to do that, or some other form of personal injury suit against you, you risk, if you have a successful business, you risk losing all of those assets because of something that you did personally. So, I'll talk about general partnerships. The only partnership I think of was partnering for some reason. Which essentially a partnership is just two people or more doing a sole proprietorship. There's no form of registration with the Secretary of State or anything like that. There's no protection. So just as with a sole proprietorship, there's a lot of risk in doing a general partnership. Added to that risk is that you've got somebody else in your business who's taking actions possibly without your authority. So let's say George Bluth and I decide to create the frozen banana stand. Well, if George Bluth goes to the creditor and says, I want $15,000 worth of bananas and decides not to pay him, well, the creditor can come back not only to George Bluth, but he can come back to me as well. And so that's a situation where the lawsuit will read creditor versus George Bluth and Blake Markus as defendants. And there's no protection of my personal assets from the actions that my partner took. So that can be extremely dangerous. So not only do you not get the same, or not only do you not have any protection just like a sole proprietorship, you actually have more liability because of what your partner can do that you may not authorize. There are such things as limited partnerships, limited liability partnerships, but that kind of falls under the same realm as limited liability companies, so I'm just going to skip over that. So with a limited liability company, it's the most flexible, I believe, of small business organizations, and it's probably one of the easiest to set up. For less than $100, you can go onto the Secretary of State's website and set up your own business with a limited liability company. There are a lot of places here in town who've done it. I just went down High Street and picked out some businesses that I found on the Secretary of State's website. South Bank, J. Finney's, Pork, Gumbo Bottoms, and Chez Monet. They've all decided to be LLCs for one reason or another. One of the best parts about a limited liability company is that it creates this level of protection for your business assets and your personal assets. So there's a wall there between your business and you. Another advantage is that it can be taxed as a partnership, which I'm not going to get into tax law, but it's beneficial because if you think about a corporation, there's a corporate tax that gets paid, and then the individual shareholders have to pay tax on their income. So the earnings from the business actually pass through to the individual members of the LLC, which could end up saving you money depending on what entity you decide to go with. Flexibility of the LLC, a lot of that comes from what's called an operating agreement. This is a document that sets out essentially the guts of your business. Defines who the members are, how to add new members, how to buy out members, how the profits and losses are split. Without an operating agreement, there is a statute that's called the Limited Liability Company Act in Missouri, and it has default rules. So if you don't want to abide by the state's default rules, you've got to have a document that outlines what your rules are. And so by spending $300, $500 up front and doing this, it will resolve a lot of disputes 5 or 6 years down the road, where you might end up spending thousands of dollars on litigation. Which, I mean, if you don't have that, you can always come and see me and spend your money. So one of the other problems is that you have to obey some formalities when you have an LLC. If you don't obey the formalities, then it's almost as if it doesn't exist. So this is called corporate veil piercing. What this means is that if you do something to not follow the formalities, then somebody can break through the protection of the LLC and actually get to your personal assets. Or reverse corporate veil piercing, where they can sue you personally and get to your business assets. So one of the ways that if I'm an attorney and I'm trying to get to your personal assets, I'm going to look at your company and say, are you undercapitalized? Which means, do you have enough money to cover all your liabilities, and are you intentionally undercapitalizing it so that you won't have to pay them? So I'm going to go to a judge and say, look, judge, I've got a $15,000 judgment against this person. They don't keep enough money in their bankroll, and so they're defrauding all the creditors. I'm going to go after his house, his car, all that stuff. That's something you probably want to avoid. So you want to make sure that there's sufficient assets in the company. You can also mitigate this with errors and omissions policies, professional liability policies, insurance, commercial general liability policies. Go talk to a not agency if you want to learn about that. The other thing that's really important is not intermingling personal and business assets. One of the biggest ways to do that is using your business checking account for paying for your mortgage, your bills, anything that's a regular personal liability, using your using your LLC assets to pay for that, or using the business assets for personal use. So taking a truck from work and using it to go on a family vacation or something like that. Doing simple things like that you may think are really innocent can actually have a big effect on your company and your personal assets. So one other quick thing that I wanted to go through was signing contracts. One thing that I've seen time and time again that is just not smart is signing any agreements on behalf of your company, but just using your own name. So if I sign a contract for my company, just Blake Markus, then I bound myself personally to that contract. So again, $15,000 for a bunch of bananas, if I just write Blake Markus on there, then I've got to go pay that, not the company. So what you want to do is sign it as the managing member, and then include the name of the business. That's the easiest way to protect yourself. And it's just one quick tip. I could probably talk about this for hours, but I only gave you 10 minutes. So. If anybody has any questions, I'm available.